Welcome back, guys. Time for the new lecture. Lately, a lot of my students, when they're faced with the first move, knight f3, they don't know what to do. And it's not typical for those who play the King's Indian, because if you play the King's Indian, you just play knight f6, g6, bishop g7, castle d6, and no matter what I do, you always have your first 5 moves. But those who play Nimzo, they have problems with knight f3, because if you play first move d5, so let me just show you this one. So if you play first knight f3 and if you play d5, all of a sudden, this is not Nimzo. This is nothing else but a typical d4, d5 thing, and you're not familiar with that. If you play King's Indian and you want to first play d5 with all those knight c6 and stuff with e5, they will play d4, and once again, you're in the same problems. And that's why Nimzo players and okay, I'm not talking about the King's Indian players. They always go knight f6 and g6. Nimzo players and d5 players have one very interesting system to go with against the Reti opening. And it's, believe it or not, nothing else but reverse London. London. And now you say, it's boring. No, it's not. It's very easy for playing. And especially because they will play knight f3 and g3. It is going to be a very aggressive and quite easy approach by black. Let's immediately go, fasten your seat belts, keep improving our channel, and let's go London against Reti. So how do we go against this? We play knight f6. Why? Because if they go with d4, if you're a Nimzo player, you'll play e6. If you're a King's Indian player, you'll play g6. But the thing is, if you're a Nimzo player, once again, I'll repeat, you should not play d5 because they play d4 and you're trapped. No more Nimzo. So after knight f3, knight f6, they go g3. And now you say, okay, I can play e6. Isn't that Nimzo? Yes, it is. But I have way easier plan and something way better for you to do. So what are you going to do? You just play d5. So you just go d5. And they go bishop g2 because they committed themselves with this move g3. And da-da-da-da, London system. And now you say, well, this is exactly the same type of system as they go d4, knight f6, knight f3, g6, bishop f4. What's the difference? Imagine this position, they already have the bishop on g7. Is there a big difference? No. That tempo is okay for black, but it's not of a crucial significance. So after like knight f3, knight f6, g3, d5, bishop g2, bishop f5, one might ask yourself, actually himself, what's the plan here and what are the differences in these positions, and is there anything that's special that white can take advantage of, or can they benefit from that tempo? You go with e6, like any London player. They go d3. It's very specific if they go with c4. You always go with c6. And if they ever go with c takes d5, you always take, just like in London, with e pawn, so you can at some point somehow take advantage of the open e file. If they play d3 to go knight c3 and stuff, you go with bishop e7 to complete your development with short castle, and your game is good. Although most of these Reti players, they will go with d3. And now, how do we play? Well, guess what? You don't have to be Magnus Carlsen to play these positions. You just go h6, creating a shelter for your bishop, either if they ever push e4 to be able to put it back and find like a good place for your bishop, or to go yourself, bishop h7, from where you're going to constantly keep an eye on the pawn on e4. So, what's the point here? They just go with knight bd2, like they're fighting for the center, everything is so good, and you just say bishop e7. Here, whenever I ask my students, how do you play London, they usually say bishop e2, but sometimes we can play bishop d3. Now we're once again flipping the board. And what are we doing by flipping the board? We're just going to check what are the important moments and points of playing the London. E3 castles, H3 D6. Where does your bishop go in London with white? It always goes on E2. That's why with black you play bishop E7. On your question, Maya, please explain us. Why don't we go bishop D3? And even if you run your chess base and try to find the games, even online games, you'll find that the bishop D3 is even more often than bishop E2. It looks more, like active, but it's not like that. Bishop on D3 is a bad piece because they will play knight BD7. You go castles, they go queen E8. All of a sudden, you just have to pay attention. If they push E5 with tempo, and you don't move your bishop, for example, you just play something, I don't know, knight BD2. I go E5, threatening your bishop. Whether you take or not, I take by pawn. When you move the bishop, and you do what? You get a fork, you get a piece, go home, forget about this game, and don't get back to chess playing holes. So what are we going to do in this case? That's why when we're black, we go knight f6, g3, d5, bishop g2, bishop f5, castle e6, d3, h6, knight bd2, boom, bishop e7. A special thing about bishop e7, just like with the white pieces when you play London, bishop belongs on e7 because we don't want to give them this e4, e5 fork threats. And now they already have to show like a pretty good understanding of these positions. Reti players, those are usually very positional guys, they have to show like a good understanding of these positions by playing queen e1 to be able to play e4. On your question, wait. What are you talking about? What's gonna happen if I play rook e1 to play e4? You're asking me what's gonna happen. I know what's gonna happen, but do you know what's gonna happen? So you go castle, they go e4 and they say, well, buddy, I played e4. What do you want? Nothing. I want your pawn, my friend. So you take on e4, and then all of a sudden, boom, knight takes e4. And now you're saying, what the hell? What if I take by knight? Nothing. I first include this intermediary move and take on e4. I'm up a pawn. Can you take maybe first by rook? No, because I take, and now you cannot take because the queen on d1 is hanging. So you just learned that the rook e1 is absolutely useless move in these positions. And that's why rook e1 is so stupid. And rook e1 in online chess is so common in these positions. And now you say, I already like this reverse London. But wait a sec, Maya. What's going to happen when we play queen e1 to go e4? Nothing. You just play London. So you play castle. They go e4. Finally, they manage to play e4. And you go back with the bishop on h7. No, we never want to take on e4. We want to play like this. And this is like one of the most important points of this variation. Here I just have to show you like few model games, and that's it. You know plans, you know model games. That's what you have to know. If I show you like do this in 15th move, do this in 25th move, that's not gonna work like that. You're gonna remember for 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, but eventually you're gonna forget. If you understand, you'll understand till the end of your life. So let's go. They just go in this position with queen e2. Your question, Maya, wait a sec. What's gonna happen if I kick this knight away with e5? Well, that's gonna look like something special, but for black, not for white. Why? I'll go back with my knight back to d7, but at the same time, all of a sudden this bishop works and goes after the d3 and c2 pawns. And now you're saying, so what? Well, not so what. Now my bishop on h7 is typical London bishop, reversed colors, but it's open. So what's gonna happen? Let's say you play queen e2 to improve your queen, and now, boom, c5. What's my plan? I want to play knight c6, but at the same time, let's say you go rook e1, like improving and defending the opponent, e5. I go knight c6, and you just play like the most typical fashion. You play knight f1. You can't play like this. I'm just going to treat this position like a London. I'll play b5 to play c4. I'll play c4 to open up my bishop. I'll play c4 to take on d3. I'll play c4 to jump with the knight on c5. I'll play c4 to weaken the pawn by taking on d3 and playing knight b4. End of the game, buddy. That's how it works. So let's say, but I won't allow you to play any knight before, stuff like that. I'll play c3. That doesn't change my plan. I'll play b5 and I'll play c4. Once I do c4, let's say you do knight f1. I play rook c8. Let's say you go h4, like typical, I don't know, like King's Indian attack. I can play c4. I can play b4. I can play a whole bunch of moves in this position, and this game just looks very, very, very strong for black. So knight b6, c4, d4, b4, do whatever you like. I would probably go with b4. That's a very lovely move. I like knight b6. It's also opening up the queen, improving some ideas with d4, c4, b4. So many things, and black is just looking good. And now you say, okay, so what are you trying to tell us? That the pawn should be standing on e4? Yes, to keep the bishop on h7 kind of locked and imprisoned. Okay, nice point. I like it. I learned it. So let's go. They go with queen e2. You already know that any e5 should be very, very nice for us. That's already a big thing. What are we supposed to do? We still go with c5. What's our plan and what do we have to do here? We got to force them to weaken the e4, d3, and c2 pawns somehow. How are we going to do it? By playing c5, by doing knight c6, by playing rook c8, by doing b5, knight b4, and doing c4. That's plan. So you know the plan. It's very easy for you. Why? Because all you want to do, provoke them to push e5, or to play e takes d5, in which case lights for a bishop would be open, and then your game looks really good and nice. So after you play c5, they have now a couple of things. For example, one of the best ideas is knight e5. I want to put my knight here, avoid knight c6, and I want to push f4, followed by possible pawn storm on the king side. Fair enough. Then we play like Gatakamsky reversed colors because he's one of the representers, main world representers of the London system with white pieces. So you go knight bd7. You can't play knight c6 because I don't want to create double pawns. I'm not crazy. So you go knight bd7. They take, and we take by queen. And now they say, hey, buddy, what do you want? I'll show you a game by one guy. He's a FIDE master and grandmaster Velikov. The game took place in Hamburg, Germany, 1981. The guy played e5, kicking the knight away with tempo, and looks like, buddy, but now you can't play knight e7 anymore. And now I don't care if I just open up the bishop and weaken these two pawns, because your knight looks so stupid. Don't worry about me. Watch your stuff, buddy. So knight goes on e8. Now you're wondering, so what are we going to do with this knight? This, this, this. And we once again go after these two pawns. Now you'd say, this looks more like a nice dream, but how are we gonna do it? f4, knight c7, knight f3, rook a c8, rook f2, b5. All of a sudden, when I showed you like knight a6, knight b4, that's generally our plan, but it doesn't mean that we always and at all costs have to do it. Here you just play rook c8 and b5 to break with c4. When I say break with c4, it doesn't mean you only and just have to play that way. He played, for example, in this game d5. With the knight on c7, his knight went all the way to d5. So the guy played g4. He brought a knight to d5. The guy plays like this. Boom. Playing c4, taking advantage of this. Knight is in the center, and the bishop on h7 is fantastic London bishop. All of a sudden, white, who went to attack doing the pawn storm, he has to all of a sudden take care of the pawn on d3. Believe it or not, this game lasted for 3 more moves. The guy played f5 like, I'm going to attack you. I'm going to lock your bishop on h7. And it looks like he's just succeeded in that. Well, just for one more move. C takes d3. The guy said, okay, let me just capture. Boom. rook takes f4. Now you're removing defender of the f4, and after knight f4, go home, buddy. See you next time when you learn how to play Reti against the London system. So I just showed you how to play. They play knight e5. Now you're gonna say, okay, Maya, but don't tell us they have to play like this. e5, I'm going to show you a game of, I have so many good games, but I'll show you a game, for example, of a good friend of mine, Dima Svetushkin, legendary GM. Unfortunately, he passed away. 97, once again, the bishop is open. 91, he wants to play some f4, 96. f4, don't hesitate. You definitely have to break with c4 and open the bishop, so b5. And now this guy played c4. He's opposing this, and his opponent was Vasile Sandulak, another GM from Moldova, who's just playing against the London system in the typical fashion. He's opposing our threats with c4. Dima played knight b6, and Dima assessed. If you play and take the pawn, he's going to easily go knight here or knight to d4 in this case, because knight on b4 wouldn't threaten anything, but knight on d4 would go with tempo. And then when you go like this, I can easily say, okay, I can get the pawn back. I can even open up the stuff. I can even play c4 if I like. I can even play a6 playing like some sort of Banco Gambit reversed. In the game was c4, knight b6, c takes, knight e4, knight e4, queen after rook c8, and queen b6. Played rook f to d8. What do you want more from one position? You get a full activity in the center. Your bishop on h7 is open. You have two amazing knights in the center. And on top of all that, the queen supports d4 with these two rooks. An amazing game for black. Black is fantastic. You're not going to say, okay, but I won't play c4. I'm just going to play king h1 to do the typical King's Indian attack. You can't. This is the game between FIDE Master and Bunzmann, GM from Germany. Queen b6. He keeps on improving his game. The guy says, okay, I'll stop your c4 ideas. He plays queen a6, a very lovely idea. Maybe you don't see the point, but the point of this move could be to slowly but surely eye the d3 weakness, with some b4 ideas, with some knight a5, knight b3 ideas. The guy played like this. He played knight a5. It's aimed against any move like this because of knight b3 threats. Plus, he just wants to go with some b4 ideas without c4 possibility for you. The guy plays d4. He played c takes. And now he's not hesitating. He's not going to play only on the queen side. He's now going to open another front for his pieces and actions. It's f-file and doing the x-rays against the queen. He takes knight takes, bishop f5, controlling the light squares, going with this trick, and won the game in 20 moves against an FM. Okay, now you'll say, okay, by now, Maya, we learned that no e5 should be working here. What if I play just cool move b3, doubling, not doubling, but placing both of my bishops on two diagonals? Knight c6, bishop b2, and rook c8. What's so special about this one? Nothing. You always go c5, knight c6, rook c8, b5, and play like that. Any e5, you go knight e7. And now I found a game where the guy played knight e1, queen b6, keep on improving his pieces to react in the center somehow. c4, b4, d4, whatever. The guy played c4 to stop his actions. Captured one thing. Why by b pawn? Because he wants to eye the pawn on b3 and the bishop on b2. Jumps with a knight right into the center of the board. And you know what? The London bishop is open. He's got a bishop pair. And on top of all that, pawn on a3 all of a sudden became weak. The guy captured. He probably was so happy to open up the game, but you know what? Opening up the game with the bishop pair definitely favors black. This guy played b4 to take on h7 and to take on e5 if you move the rook, but he probably missed this intermediary move. After like bishop h7, they went into an endgame like this, and black went on to win with a passed pawn and very strong bishop and definitely better pieces and always possibility to break these pawns. And finally, can they play rook e1? keeping like the pawn on e4, fighting against the London bishop and doing, I would say, pretty much logical things. Well, you can play like this, but we still go with the knight c6. And let's say they go with c3. I'll give you the game of Grandmaster Mirzaev. He went for b5, which is nothing else but way to go with c4 and break these pawns in the most typical fashion. Even c3, you break with b4. But you want to play c4, of course. The guy just continued to play the King's Indian setup with h4, c4, undermining these pawns. The guy said, okay, can I go with this? Buddy, you can do it, but I'll play by this pawn. I keep going after this so you can never move your knight to f1 and go like with this plan, as long as you don't do something with the pawn on e4. And when you push your pawn up to e5 or take on d5, then my bishop on h7, becoming a London bishop, and I'm gonna do whatever I can. Actually, whatever I want. So after knight h2, rook c8, knight g4, he captured, and all of a sudden, knight jumps here, going after the queen, goes after the weakness on d3. Jumping, and this game lasted a few more moves. Bishop f6, rook b8, going after the b2 pawn, wants to also take and take on b2, taking by pawn, taking on c1, winning the pawn. Take a look at this monster on h7 that comes to d3, won the pawn, and go home, buddy. So just like you see, after like knight c6, let's say they still want to do some e5. Not a big deal. I play knight d7. Now my bishop is once again monster who attacks both c2 and d3 weaknesses. Knight f1, b5. Why? Because we're just expanding, and by now you just learned that the idea is c4. And this guy played h4. I'm showing you a game from North American Open Las Vegas 2015. Keaton Kura was white and Michael Brown black. The guy played c4, I like it. He's just weakening these two. You can't sit and wait. You can play this move. I'm just going to take. And when I take, I'm just going to jump with the knight on c5. Once I jump with the knight on c5, you have problems with this. I can also play this. So you can never push d4 because I'm going to use the London bishop and win an exchange. And that's why he played d4. A reasonable reaction. Now you're just doing the pawn storm on the queen side. a4, b4, captured, and famous way of penetrating. You want to penetrate on b3, going after both of these weaknesses. The guy put all his hopes into some sort of attack. Rook to b3, going after the weaknesses. Playing knight a7, knight b5, going after these weaknesses. This guy is preparing himself for the attack. But after king h8, which should give him enough of defense, knight a3, h5, knight c2. Once again, London bishop decided the game, and he won a very easy game. Hopefully you like this very short, but I believe very effective presentation of the reverse London against Reti opening, and hopefully you're going to use this in your games from now on. Enjoy, and don't forget, soon I'm going to teach you how to play London system with white pieces. All the best, and see you next time.